Hello and welcome to the virtual conference live talks. My name is Dov Benyaacov-Kurtzman, and I'm sure you're just like me, and we've been waiting in anticipation for our great guest that we have tonight, Dr. Professor Kelly Wilson. There's a lot of people coming on tonight. We really want you to start saying hello in the comments. We want you to interact with Kelly tonight so you can ask as many questions as you wish, and we'll try and address as many questions as we can. So put your comments and questions in the comments section now, and we'll see how quickly we can address them. We've got Kelly waiting in the green room, and just as usual, I'm not going to introduce him. I could not do him justice, so I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. So without further ado, please, a big welcome to Professor Kelly Wilson. Hello, sir.
Hello, thank you for your kindness. I don't know. I'm a college professor. I have had the very good fortune of being among people who helped to develop a model of treatment called acceptance and commitment therapy, and I'm still professor emeritus at the University of Mississippi, although that's just a kind of a name. I actually live in Arizona and spend more time trail running than teaching.
Wow. Yeah, I've been following you, and you do a lot of that trail running, and it's great to watch you. I know that you've recently retired, and we also have a mutual friend in Amy Murrell, and she was on here on the virtual conference not so long ago, just last week, and we know that she was one of your first, or the first PhD student that you had, #1. So that's wonderful. I personally am very excited. I met you face to face very briefly for the first time when we were in Spain at the World Conference there. But you had so many people wanting to get to you and speak to you that my brief moment was just to say hello to you. But I'm making up for it now, and I really, really thank you. I know there's so many people that want to see you and listen to you and talk to you. And so that's why I've arranged this. We've got a lot of people coming on, but I can tell you, between you and me, no one else listening, you're really, really popular for people coming on tonight. So we've waited in anticipation. It isn't a bit of an interactive thing, so I just want to check what people are saying and bring you in with them. So we have Norman Evans saying, great, excellent, you're on the show. We have Naftali coming in saying hi from Jerusalem. Amy, I don't have sound, maybe just me. Okay, so that's the technical thing. Amy, I love the photograph. Amy's got really up-to-date mask on there. But Amy, if anyone else is having problems of the sound, then please let me know, and we'll get that going. So Elilach says hi. Dan Pond is saying hello. Hani Ganani is saying thank you. Vered is saying thank you, Dov and Kelly. Wonderful. Oh, we've got an update from Amy saying now she can hear. Maybe the mask is over the ears. Check it out. And Norman saying, are you in Mississippi? Are you?
I am not. I retired from my post in May of last year, and my wife and I moved to Arizona. So we live in a subtropical desert.
Wow, that sounds brilliant. So why have I invited you on? Because basically this whole new world that we're living in at the moment, with coronavirus, the whole thing, the first part, we had a break there for a week, but the first couple of weeks we were having guests on was basically talking about how to deal with the shock, if you like, the shock of having to be on lockdown, the shock of the fear of being infected. But as time is going on, and here in the UK, we're going into our 5th week of lockdown. Mm-hmm. And I know there's some people tuning in here from all sorts of different places that they've been even longer in that situation. Now, so people begin, I think, from what I'm observing, is that initial shock has gone, and we're getting into a situation where it's kind of two things happening at the one time. One is that we're kind of getting used to it in a way, but it's becoming very frustrating. But the initial shock has kind of gone, and all this, people putting on videos of fancy things and doing stupid things in the first, that's kind of settled down a bit. People are kind of wondering when this is going to finish. And so it's a different kind of emotional and psychological reaction that's going on. Tolerances I'm seeing are beginning to go down. People are getting a lot more irritable and edgy. And if they're living with more than a few people in the same house, there's that kind of tension that might be going on, even if they're all loving and wonderful with each other, but just spending in a submarine, so much time together can have its toll, especially when there's a lack of space and people not going out. And then there's that kind of institutionalization kind of thing going on, where you're in the same place every day, everything looks the same. There's not really a lot of structure because our lives has got so much structure. You're going to work, you're coming back, you go to school, you come back, you go to university, you come back. But now we're all in the one room or the one few rooms and everything looks the same. Sometimes we're getting up a bit later maybe, so the nights and the days are getting a wee bit mixed up as well. And I know personally, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking, what day is this really? Is this, is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? So there's that kind of thing going on, and also with a view to worrying and having a lot of stress for what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And that is even not taking into consideration a lot of grief that people might be going through. I know I lost a friend last week to this virus, and there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of personal loss. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to do was to bring my friends and my colleagues and the people that I deal with and my mentors also, which are 99% from the ACT community, because I wasn't always part of this. I was, once had a career where I was working 18, 20 hours a day, workaholic, kind of totally out of it, focused on one thing and everything else was secondary. But now I've learned through what people like you are teaching me, to become mindful, to become much more, being able to hold things a little bit lighter, to be more open to what's going on inside me. I've got your book constantly around. So I wanted to actually bring you on and say, look, this is not a lecture. This is not talking about, teaching professionals. This is about people coming in here now to listen and say, what, from your experience and your teaching and your learning, what kind of wisdom can you pass on to us, listening to you and say, look, we know you don't have all the answers, but what can you give us to get us through this period that we're in now? Mm-hmm. And how can we use what maybe you can give us in this short time? And this is what I like to call a nano workshop. It's not about talking. It's about trying to get something that we can leave with and say, you know what, we can take this onward in our life.
Well, all of the things that you were talking about as you sort of listed off, uncertainty, limitations, mortality. I'm an old Viktor Frankl fan. And, when I was beginning my own recovery back in the mid-'80s, I used to carry a copy of Man's Search of Meaning around with me like a compass, and I was coming out of a dreadful sort of history of depression and drug and alcohol addiction. And I would, look at that book and I would think, if Viktor Frankl could find liberation in Auschwitz, maybe Kelly could find liberation in Spokane, Washington, right. Like it gave me a sense that there was hope for me. And I really think that that it's worth that it, one of the things that helps me and it's integral to ACT is perspective taking. And I was engaging in a bit of it then without even really having a name for it. But it was sort of like if Viktor Frankl could see purpose and meaning and be sustained in the midst of those kinds of horrors, then these horrors, which are not the same. They maybe they certainly are not the same level of horrors, but there's a sense of hope, I think, in the midst of that. One of the lessons I took away from Frankl was that the death camp wasn't different than life, that it was like life, but condensed in such a way that it was undeniable. The necessity of finding purpose and of linking our moment by moment acts to something larger than ourselves to some purpose that extends beyond us. That formula, in the midst of the hardship that Frankel experienced, I think is the formula for all of us. Sometimes I think people, and I've heard a number of people express sort of, almost embarrassment that they feel bad about their losses when their losses aren't, something like the loss of life. But I don't think losses are something to be weighed or measured against one another. I think that losses are to be appreciated, to be witnessed, and to be honored. I have a daughter whose master's thesis show, an art show, which the whole family was planning to attend, was canceled. All of those Master of Fine Arts students shows were canceled. And, somebody, and I know that there are thousands of those graduations and weddings and funerals, putting people to rest, that people can't attend to them. And those, small, meaningful moments in people's, those are the landscapes of love, these, kind of moments that we inhabit together. And some of them are, enormous and terrifying, like the loss of life itself. But I think they all count. They all matter. They all can be honored.
Yeah, I thank you for that. It's interesting. There's a lot of viewers coming in here from Israel right now, and tonight in Israel is Holocaust Memorial Day. So the fact that you brought up Viktor Frankl is, again, there are no coincidences in this life, I believe. And, somebody just wrote in, it's a tribute to Viktor Frankl and Holocaust Day here in Israel. I also, like many and like yourself, take a lot from Viktor Frankl's work. And that idea of him in that camp being, basically all of his freedoms taken away, with the terror of possible death. Of course, just like you said, it's not the same, but there are similarities of the fact that we're living, even if it's just for this moment, with certain freedoms and restrictions that we didn't choose to be in this situation, where we're forced into this situation, basically. And at the same time, there is a real threat of death. That's, we cannot take that away. But taking what you've said of, from the inspiration of Viktor Frankl, of finding that purpose and that meaning transcends all of this.
Yes.
It transcends the fact that we're, confined in this whatever space that you find yourself in. Some have got bigger and smaller, but it transcends that. It transcends the virus. It transcends the physical situation that we're in, whether it will be financial difficulty or whatever it is that we're going to all be a part of. And the interesting thing about this is it's worldwide. We're all going through the same thing, no matter what flag we fly or what we believe in or what kind of clothes we wear. This is affecting all of us the same. And that in itself, if, spirituality sometimes gets bad press, people hear that word and they start to cringe. But this is where spirituality does take, a central place. If we are going to get through this, then finding meaning and purpose in one's life is what is going to do it for us.
Yes. Yes.
My question to you, though, would be, how do we get, not all of us are skilled and practiced in getting in touch with whatever that is. How do we get in touch with that meaning and that purpose, if we were to try and begin that journey now?
I think that your question and the kind of practice that interests me isn't just something that honors Frankl, but rather was his intention. I mean, his intention of writing that book was not to write a book for people who are in death camps. His book was intended for us to take the lessons that he learned and apply it to, this life right here and right now. And, I think, some of the things that it's provoked in me in terms of practices is to take this time. There are a lot of things I can't do right now, but there are some things that I can do, and to do those that I can do. So, for me, the practices have been to think about the people in my life. Like I think about Frankl, and I think if he could have gotten a message out to anyone in the world, who might have he gotten a message out to? Who would he have liked to have spoken to if he could have just sent a few sentences to them and let them know that he was thinking of them in the middle of that, extraordinary circumstance? Who might that be? And for people who are listening, are there people in the world who you love, and have you reached out to them, and maybe even in the particulars? It's one thing to say, I really love you so much, and I want you to know that. It's another to, for example, to think of a particular moment that you've spent with someone. So if you think of someone you love, who you love like mad, who maybe isn't nearby, and think about the sort of landscapes of love, like the moments that you've spent together. And so maybe it's somebody who you swam with, or that you played with when you were small, or who was kind to you. And to write, I was thinking of you, and I was thinking, like if I think about my grandmother, I remember that she used to let me help her make pancakes, and she would let me stir, And if I think of my brother David, who I lost some years back, I would remember that times when we would lay in bed and scratch one another's back, me on his and his on mine. Remembering those kind of moments and offering them to the people around us. The good thing about, this electronic sort of world that we live in is that it's actually possible to speak to people, and knowing that loss is real. Something like this, it tells us, I think it's what Frankl meant, that loss ends are already always there, and they're always unknown, but we can kind of pretend like they aren't. Things like this can help lift that up in our awareness and ask us, if you had these moments that you could spend, if there were people who you could speak to, if there's unfinished business, if there's forgiveness that maybe you've been waiting on till you're not quite so mad, maybe today's the day. Maybe today's the day.
Maybe today's the day. What I found in doing these talks, and I'm finding it with you now, and which really surprises me more than anything, is, and you mentioned it slightly, we're living in at the moment in a kind of a virtual technological communication world. We're not allowed to be in the same room as other people at the moment. But I can feel it even through this medium. I feel I'm getting from you, I'm getting kind of welled up a little bit. I'm getting the emotion. I'm feeling it, even though you brought that up there. And I find that the most incredible thing.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can, even in this state of isolation, pass on or communicate that love and kindness, that intention that you just brought up there. And what a wonderful way of doing it, which, Yeah, we do have this tendency, especially in the Western world anyway, of, yeah, I love you. Yeah, I love you too. Finished. Right. But what you said there was something much deeper and more profound. It's not just I love you, okay, but the smells that I get when I'm thinking about you, or that feeling of the scratching each other's back, or whatever it is that is associated with that, has a much deeper emotional attachment than just, even though you really genuinely mean it when you say I love you, it has a much more three dimensions when you bring in some experience that's associated with those words. So I thank you for that, first of all, because I never thought about that personally before. And I think even if you just think about it yourself, already you're different how you relate to somebody when you bring that up, and not be afraid to bring that up, because I know personally, not so long ago, I would have been maybe afraid to bring that up, because I can feel it now. I can feel everything that you've just brought up in me, and because I found a connection with that right now. But I would have been maybe think twice before I would want to let that come out in me. Do you know what I'm saying? Is
Sure. Yeah. It's, as unpleasant as it is to live in our heads in worry and rumination, it's kind of known, and we can sort of, but to live in the world, it's a creative act, and it's a bold and terrifying thing, and worth it, and worth it.
worth it.
While we still have time, while we still have time.
And that time when you said maybe today's the day, is because we really don't know how much time we have. We just do not know it. And to miss today for being whatever. I was talking to someone earlier today, and they were saying, I don't want to come out of this and having wasted my time. And I said, well, there's no waste of time. Every minute has something to offer us, to teach us, to be with, of value. Just even if you're just noticing the minute, you don't have to actually be physically doing anything. There's no waste at all.
At some point in, I believe it's in Man's Search for Meaning. I've read a lot of different Frankl, but I remember one place he's talking about laying maybe in his bed, and he can see out the window, in this, terrible landscape, but he can see this tree and a blossom on the tree. And you get, this is like a valued moment for him, just lying there and to see this flower blooming, just that bit of aesthetic, present moment appreciation. But, he wrote it down, I have to think, with a reason. And it's to say that sometimes what you can do is just tiny, but it all counts. It all matters.
It all matters. The tiny. So, like, if you were, and you have the option right now to be able to go into each of these individual homes that are all pointing towards you at this minute, and you were be able to sit with each one individually, and you had, only a few minutes to do it. I mean, how would you be with them in order to give them some comfort and hope?
Yeah. Well, I think two things. So one is that the little sort of exercise in imagination that I suggested before, to think about the people to just take a quiet moment and to think about the people in the world who you love, and to select one, and to think back on the moments when you knew that you were loved. Maybe moments when you caught them looking at you, where they could see in your eyes how much you loved them, and to just notice what were the qualities of action. What were you doing? Maybe just sitting on the couch reading a story, or going for a walk. Simple things, and then to give voice to those things. Maybe to that person, or maybe to someone else. I couldn't say anything about my brother David because I lost him, 9 years ago now. But to have spoken of him, to you and to everyone who's listening, he lives a little bit in that. And so that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is kind of, maybe it'll sound like a funny piece, but it's if you're sort of judging yourself about, not doing a good job in the middle of all of this, I would really say, be kind to yourself also. Be kind to yourself also. You're not some kind of efficiency machine. You're not some kind of importance machine. You're not any kind of machine. You're a real live whole person. And sometimes we fall down, and thank heavens, that sometimes we get a chance to get back up. I know that has been true in my own life. And so, I would wish people peace and kindness towards themselves, so that later, maybe they'll have a chance to rise up and offer it to someone else.
Wow, I think that's beautiful. And if you were visiting my home, which you are, and say that to me, then that would certainly be something. I think that is the expression of a great way of expressing love, a great way of expressing appreciation for myself, but also for others. And I think that message is, I thought the opposite way around, but I met Amy first before I met you, and I nearly cried with her. I nearly cried with you. So now I know where she's got this from. I'm going to go through it to a couple of people that have commented. It's only fair. Let's see. So Kim says, what if you've lost a sense of purpose and meaning that Frankl talked about? How do we begin to find that again? So that's somebody who had maybe meaning of a purpose, don't know why they would have lost it, but sometimes that can happen. I know that. How do we get back to that?
The old saying goes that just because the sun covers the clouds cover the sun doesn't mean the sun doesn't exist anymore. And I've been in very dark places in my own life where I lost any sense of purpose, any sense of meaning, when I was waiting for the day when I had the courage or apathy to die. So I feel that. I think to even ask the question, I think shows an urge towards purpose and meaning. And I think it's a wonderful place to start with, what might that be for me if I gave it a chance to return. And so to me, I want to enter conversations with the people around me about purpose and meaning. You spoke of Amy in this way, and I don't know that she really got it from me. I would say it's probably more like likes attract, that, that's the people who I have sought out in my life and sought conversations with were, to engage in conversations with people who would sit still and take seriously conversations about what I might invest myself in. And, you're like a vessel and you can choose. And so, I like to ask people, well, what have you been about before? What did you love and care about before? Sometimes those are things that have been lost and they're irretrievably lost, you know, relationships or, people who maybe aren't even alive anymore. But sometimes you can look into the heart of those things and see, well, what was that about? So, I've lost 3 brothers.
Wow.
3 brothers, and some of them I was on better terms with. One of them I was horrible and judgmental the last week of his life that I saw him. And, I can't go back to that purpose of being a brother to him, but I could look at that experience with him and say, what would it mean to be a brother to my fellows?
Right.
What would honor that loss, including the loss that I made myself, the loss that I precipitated. And so sometimes we can look back at the things we have valued and find kind of what is, at the heart of that. And then begin this kind of inquiry of like, if I could honor that in my life today, what would be the next small thing that I might do that would honor that thing that I used to value, maybe even that thing that was lost.
And just to link that with what Kim said, or how you answered Kim, was even if it just starts with that question,
Yes,
that is amazing, because sometimes we just don't think that the question is part of it, but it's the seed. The fact that you've asked the question means that it's something there of importance.
There's more to you. There is
Yeah.
more to you than any thought you've ever had about yourself. Brian Stevenson, who's defended prisoners on death row in Alabama, I was on the stage with him a few years back when he was giving an address at a university function. And at one moment he said, "You are more than your greatest mistake." He said, "Even if you're a murderer, you are more than your greatest mistake." I mean, I was like lifted. I mean, I swear I levitated just a little bit. Said, because because it was like he was speaking to me. And I would say that to people who feel lost, that you are more than that sense of loss.
Wow, absolutely. So thank you for that. Svi says thank you. Stephanie Haft is on as well, if you know Stephanie. Norman says exactly, Dov, there's no waste of time. And Amy says, hi, Sonia. Sonia says, hi, back. So Norman is saying, exercise and imagination. Thanks, Kelly, for this idea. Be kind to yourself. You're not any kind of machine. Yeah, I love that, because this society is so telling us every minute of how we're like machines and how we must be efficient and how we must produce and and there's this waste of time if you're not constantly on the go. So yeah, peace and kindness towards yourself. So yeah, thank you, Norman, for that, because I wanted to mention that as well. Mary says, I found meaning in my test of adaptation to change and to the physical limitation in my life. Suddenly the desire for perfection begins to calm down. Hey to Kelly, which I met in a conference 2008 in the Netherlands. So thanks for that. Vered says, how do you get in touch with a depressed person who is at a state of no dual awareness?
I'm not sure I know the last term, dual awareness, but I sure know about from the inside out about, depression that is so crushing that, I mean, I've spent time literally in a coat closet, on the floor because, with the door pulled closed because, it felt like I could do that, and no more than that. I think I I have a place in my heart for people carrying that kind of weight, and I always treat them. I'm a little tangential, but
It's okay.
bear with me.
I'm with you all the way.
My wife's dad. So when I met my wife, it's a little over 40 years ago, and I was a hot mess. Active drug addiction, and kind of no fixed address, no gainful employment that was recognizable in any way. And my wife's dad, I wasn't looking like a really good idea for your only daughter.
Right.
And I always told people about my wife's dad that he always treated me as if I was just about to do the right thing. Like no matter what I did, he just kept
Right.
treating me as I was just about to do the right thing. And I think with someone who's like really depressed, not in a way that I'm like trying to push them to do anything, because
Yeah.
pushing on people who are depressed, good luck with that. But there's someone there, there is someone there, and to treat them as if there's someone there who's just about to see that moment, when they could come out and play in the world, maybe to invite them out, even when they say no, and to make sure that they know that the invitation is open, without demand, without insisting that it go anywhere in particular, but to just say, my door is open. You want to go for a walk, you want a coffee, you want to talk, you want to just sit.
Listening to you tonight has been a real strength to me in the way that it has installed for me a renewed, I mean, I know it was there, but it's been renewed, strengthened, the idea of people helping people. That, as long as you've got there, either you're going to help somebody else or somebody there is for you, that idea that you can express your love for somebody in such a beautiful, profound way. There's nothing fancy about this. There's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be anything fancy. You just feel what you feel and express that for someone. And even if it's, can we go for a walk and you'll buy you a cup of coffee, can mean so much to somebody because it's what you're interested in spending time with me and just give me a cup of coffee. I mean, that could open up somebody's world. Absolutely.
Yes.
And we all have that ability. We really do. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. And going back to Viktor Frankl, like we started off with, where basically everything has been stripped from you. He had, and we have, and we've learned again through you, that we can offer ourselves to others, and we can accept others offering themselves to us. And I think it's probably, and I don't want to quote things in front of a professor, but I'm more than positive that it's backed up in real research and science that social support is probably the biggest antidote, the biggest protective factor we have in all this that we're going through.
Yes.
And it's there at our fingertips, even if it's just sending a text or doing a video call, and we've all, we've more or less all got that technology now. Even in a friend of mine went into the the wildest places in Africa where there's all, they don't even have a lot, but they have mobile phones. Everyone's got mobile. But have that communication, and just a little emoji, even of a smile, shows that, how simple can it be now? So just before we finish off, people are writing in, so I don't want to miss them out. So everything you were speaking about is central to mindfulness, says Naftali. Mindfulness for two. Thank you for one of the most enlightening and at the same time practical books I've read on psychotherapy, ACT or otherwise. What would you suggest as next steps, especially in light of this dialogue? I think more or less you've kind of covered that, unless you want to say something else. Verid says, thank you. Y64S6, not sure what that is. Any case. So it has been very, very strengthening for me personally. I've got no doubt everybody watching this live now and in catch up, repeat, whatever this is watched at a later date. I think it's relevant for today, very relevant, but I think it's relevant for every day.
I think so.
Kelly Wilson, thank you very, very much for joining me tonight on the virtual conference.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
I know.